Yeah, and you mentioned the first few pages that you asked for, the 10 to 15 pages. Do you put more weight, or maybe it's hard to say, but do you tend to place more weight on those pages or on the actual query?
I don't think I give the query a ton of weight. Really, like I said, it's the introduction, it's just the hello. And if it's competently written, I typically just jump to the sample pages. That being said, there are things in the query where it's a surprisingly high amount. I would say, maybe even 50% of the queries I get are just for books that I would never represent because they're the wrong genre, especially in nonfiction, that there really just is no market for whatever kind of book. But if it gets past that sort of initial smell test, I really just jump to the pages, and that is pretty clear, I think, from the first few, sometimes even sentences, whether or not there's a base level writing competence that this writer has, that, they have a future and they can find success in commercial trade publishing.
Is there anything that comes to mind, though, with the author stuck in the query trenches?
I mean, I think you have to read between the lines a little bit with querying. If you send out 10 query letters for your debut novel and you're not getting a single response, like even canned thanks but no thanks, then I think there's something clearly wrong with the letter itself. If you're getting, partial requests and then that's where the rejection is coming, then yeah, I mean, that speaks to having some flaw in the narrative or in the writing itself. But I think, you have to do it slowly but surely. Like I always tell people, never send it to more than like 5 or 6 people in a round, because you only get one shot to make a first impression. And if you send out, 5 or 6 queries and you get a couple of polite rejections, then I think that speaks to, okay, maybe the first few pages aren't where I should start this narrative. If it's nonfiction, you really have to make the whatever issue or whatever topic you're writing about has to be impactful and has to show that like it's urgent for this moment. So if you're not hearing back from people, then it's like, well, think about how I'm framing this story and if there is some more contemporary relevance and something I can draw in to make people care more about it in this moment. And I think aside from the actual querying process, the work is not simply done through that kind of outreach. The work on the narrative or on the fiction side is, start placing some short stories in some magazines and some journals and some websites. Start pitching book reviews, doing whatever it is to separate yourself and not only endear yourself to other writers, but give yourself some bylines here so people can recognize your name. I mean, that just puts you above and beyond most people querying who think it is enough to simply be writing in this bubble and then when the work is done, send it out. I don't think that that's that true anymore. And then on the nonfiction side, if you are writing about whatever it is, you have to separate yourself as an authority on this thing. So if you're writing a history of World War II, like you should be pitching articles and essays that show, oh, this particular battle or this particular thing like has contemporary parallels that nobody's considered before. Then agents are going to start to recognize your name as an authority and see that, oh, well, he published this op-ed in the New York Times about this thing we hadn't considered before. This is a platform developing. This is going to be an easier book than just saying, oh, here's this academic who's never published in the trade market before that we're trying to break out, because that's a harder thing to do.